No one thought humanity would answer until the red alert was triggered. The great hull of the Galactic Concorde stretched for miles in every direction. Its walls were made of living crystal that pulsed with soft blue light. Thousands of aliens from hundreds of different worlds filled the enormous chamber. They spoke in clicks, whistles, and sounds that no human throat could ever make. Ambassador Catherall walked through the crowd with the confidence of someone who belonged. He was tall, nearly 8 feet, with gray skin that looked like polished stone. 4 compound eyes sat on his elongated head, each one capable of seeing in different spectrums of light. His species, the Dominion, had been part of the Concorde for 6,000 years. They had seen empires rise and fall. They had watched young species stumble into space and either grow wise or destroy themselves. Today, Catherall was reviewing membership files. It was boring work, but necessary. The Concorde had 847 member species spread across 3 spiral arms of the galaxy. Someone had to keep track of them all. He stopped at a small entry near the bottom of his datapad. Earth, humanity, members for 40 years. Catherall made a sound that was something like a sigh. He remembered when the humans had first appeared. A Valorian trade convoy had been passing through an unremarkable solar system when they detected radio signals coming from a small blue planet. The Valorians had made contact, and the humans had reacted with a mixture of fear and excitement that Catherall found almost funny. The Concorde had debated for 3 years about whether to admit humanity. They were so young. Their civilization was barely 10,000 years old. They had only left their own planet a few centuries ago. Their technology was primitive. Their lifespans were heartbreakingly short. A human who lived for 100 years was considered old. Catherall himself was 412. And he was still considered young by Dominion standards. In the end, the Concorde had admitted humanity out of politeness more than anything else. It was easier to let them join than to explain why they could not. Catherall looked at the file again. Category: non-essential. Military contribution: negligible. Strategic value: none. He closed the file and moved on to more important matters. Far across the galaxy, on the small blue planet called Earth, a woman named Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of a ship called the Defiance. She was 34 years old, with dark hair cut short and eyes that had seen too much for someone her age. She wore the uniform of the United Earth Navy, and the rank insignia on her collar marked her as a commander. The Defiance was not a large ship. By Concorde standards, it was barely more than a shuttle. But Elena loved it anyway. She had served on this ship for 7 years, working her way up from junior officer to commander. She knew every corridor, every system, every quirk of its aging engines. "Commander," said her first officer, a man named James Chun, "we have received a monthly update from the Concorde." Elena nodded. "Anything interesting?" James scrolled through the data. Trade agreements. Border disputes. A new species was discovered in the Outer Rim. The usual. Elena smiled slightly. The Concorde sent these updates every month, but they rarely contained anything that mattered to Earth. Humanity was too small, too weak, too far from the center of galactic politics. The elder races tolerated them, but nothing more. She had attended a Concorde summit once 3 years ago. She remembered how the other ambassadors had looked at her, not with hatred or fear, just with a kind of gentle dismissal, like adults watching children play a game they did not understand. One ambassador, a Valorian with silver scales and golden eyes, had spoken to her at a reception. "You are very brave to come here," the Valorian had said. Elena had not known how to respond. "Thank you." The Valorian had smiled in a way that did not reach his eyes. "Your species is so young. You have accomplished much in a short time. But you must understand, Commander. The galaxy is vast and old. The Concorde has existed for 12,000 years. We have seen species like yours come and go. Most burn bright and then fade. Some destroy themselves. A few survive and grow wise. The Valorian had paused. We hope humanity will be one of the survivors. But hope is not certainty. Elena had thought about those words many times since then. She wondered if the Valorian was right. Were humans just children playing at something they did not understand? Would they fade away like so many others before them? She looked out the viewport at the stars. Earth was behind her, a tiny dot of blue and white. Ahead was the endless black of space. "Commander?" James said. "Is everything all right?" Elena turned away from the viewport. "Fine. Just thinking." "About what?" She considered the question. "About whether we matter. Whether any of this matters." James raised an eyebrow. "That is a big question for a Tuesday morning." Elena laughed. It was a small laugh, but genuine. "You are right. Forget I said anything. What is our next assignment?" "Patrol duty in the outer system. Looking for smugglers." "Exciting," Elena said dryly. "Very exciting." James agreed. The Defiance turned and began its slow journey toward the edge of the solar system. Behind them, Earth continued its endless orbit around the sun. Billions of humans went about their daily lives, unaware of the vast galaxy that surrounded them, unaware of the ancient civilizations that watched them with patient, dismissive eyes, and far away, in the darkness between galaxies, something stirred. Something old. Something hungry. Something that had slept for millions of years and was now beginning to wake. The Concorde did not know about it yet. They would learn soon enough. And when they learned, when they sent out their desperate call for help, they would not expect humanity to answer. They would not expect humanity to care. But humanity would surprise them. Humanity would surprise everyone. Because the elder races had forgotten something important. They had grown wise and careful and cautious. They calculated risks and measured costs. They made logical decisions based on strategic value. Humanity did none of these things. When someone called for help, humans answered. It did not matter if the call came from a friend or a stranger. It did not matter if answering was dangerous or foolish or doomed to fail. Humans simply went. The galaxy was about to learn this lesson, and it would never forget. The first warning came from the Valorian colony of Brighthaven. It was a small world on the edge of known space, home to 3 million Valorians and a thriving agricultural industry. The colony had existed for 2,000 years without incident. Then, in a single night, it went silent. The Concorde sent a scout ship to investigate. The ship arrived at Brighthaven and found nothing. Not ruins, not wreckage, not bodies, just nothing. The planet was still there, but everything on it was gone. Buildings, forests, oceans, people. All of it had vanished, as if someone had simply erased them from existence. The scout ship sent one final message before it. 2 went silent. Something is coming. Something from the dark. It is. The message ended there. Admiral Silex of the Combined Defense Force read the report 3 times before he allowed himself to believe it. He was old, even by the standards of his species. His carapace had turned from bright green to a dull gray over the centuries. His eyes, once sharp, now needed mechanical enhancement to see clearly. But his mind was still sharp, and his mind was telling him that something terrible was happening. "Show me the data," he said to his aide. The aide projected a holographic map of the galaxy. A small red dot marked the location of Brighthaven. As Silex watched, another red dot appeared nearby. Then another. Then 3 more. "These are confirmed losses," the aide said. 6 worlds have gone dark in the past 72 hours. Silex felt cold. "What do we know about the attacker?" "Very little, Admiral. Long-range sensors have detected something. moving through the void. But the readings make no sense. The objects appear to be thousands of kilometers across, but they have almost no mass. They do not register on thermal sensors. They do not respond to communication attempts. Have we engaged them in battle? The aide hesitated. The Third Fleet attempted to intercept one of the objects near the Kethmer border. 200 ships. They were destroyed in less than 4 minutes. We have no survivors. No wreckage. Nothing. Silex closed his eyes. 200 ships. Some of the finest vessels in the Concorde fleet. Gone in 4 minutes. What are they? He asked quietly. We do not know, Admiral. Our scientists have begun calling them the Harrow. It seems appropriate. The Harrow. A word that meant to tear apart, to devastate, to leave nothing behind. Silex looked at the map again. More red dots were appearing. The Harrow were moving inward, toward the heart of Concorde space. Over the following days, the situation grew worse. The Harrow did not negotiate. They did not make demands. They did not even acknowledge that other species existed. They simply moved through space, consuming everything in their path. Planets, moons, asteroids, ships. Nothing was spared. The Valorians lost their homeworld on the 5th day. A civilization that had existed for 15,000 years was erased in a matter of hours. The Kethmer hegemony, proud warriors who had never lost a war, threw their entire military against the Harrow. The battle lasted 1 day. The hegemony ceased to exist on the 6th day. Silex watched the reports come in with growing horror. He had fought in 3 wars during his long life. He had seen death and destruction on scales that most beings could not imagine. But he had never seen anything like this. The Harrow were not conquerors. They were not even destroyers. They were something far worse. They were erasers. They removed things from existence as if those things had never been real at all. On the 7th day, Silex made a decision that no Concorde admiral had made in 8,000 years. He activated the Red Alert. The Red Alert was a protocol created during the last Great War, when the Concorde had faced extinction at the hands of the machine plague. It was a signal that meant one thing: send everything. Send everyone. This is the end. The signal went out to every member world in the Concorde. 847 species received the same message. Most responded immediately. Fleets launched from 1,000 worlds, converging on the Kira threshold, the last defensible position before the core worlds. Silex did not bother checking if humanity responded. Earth was far away, on the edge of explored space. Their fleet was small and primitive. Even if they sent every ship they had, it would not make a difference. He had more important things to worry about. The Harrow continued their advance. More worlds fell. More species died. The Concorde's greatest minds worked desperately to find a weakness, a vulnerability, anything that might stop the enemy. They found nothing. Silex stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Light, and watched the tactical display. The Harrow were 3 days away from the threshold. His fleet was large, but he knew it would not be enough. Nothing would be enough. Admiral, his aide said, we have received responses from most member worlds. I am uploading the data now. Silex glanced at the list. Most species had sent what they could. Some had sent everything. A few had sent nothing at all, too far away or too frightened to respond. Near the bottom of the list, he saw a small entry. Earth, humanity, response, acknowledged. Forces en route. Silex almost ignored it. What could humanity possibly send that would matter? A few dozen ships? 100? It would be like throwing pebbles at a hurricane. He turned back to the main display. The Harrow were still coming. The darkness was still spreading. And somewhere in the vast emptiness of space, 1,200 human ships were burning their engines at maximum power, racing toward a battle that everyone expected them to lose. They came anyway, because that was what humans did. The message arrived at Earth at 3:47 in the morning, Greenwich Mean Time. It came through every communication channel simultaneously. Military networks, civilian broadcasts, private frequencies. Everyone heard it at the same moment. This is Admiral Silex of the Combined Defense Force. The Galactic Concorde faces extinction. An enemy we cannot stop is destroying everything in its path. We are making our final stand at the Kira threshold. To all member worlds, send everything. Send everyone. May the stars have mercy on us all. For 17 minutes, nothing happened. People listened to the message. They talked to each other. They asked questions that no one could answer. What was the Kira threshold? What enemy? What did extinction mean for Earth? Then the response began. It started with the military. Admiral Catherine Rhodes, commander of the United Earth Navy, issued a single order. All ships. All personnel. Maximum speed to Kirith. No exceptions. Every naval vessel in the solar system changed course. Patrol ships abandoned their routes. Training vessels loaded their cadets and launched. Ships that were being repaired disconnected from their docks, some still trailing cables and scaffolding, but it did not stop there. Colony, ships from Mars and Europa, diverted from their planned missions. Mining vessels in the asteroid belt powered up engines that had not been used in years. Cargo freighters dumped their loads into space to make room for weapons and volunteers. Research stations transmitted their data to Earth and then converted themselves into makeshift warships. Private citizens joined the fleet. Wealthy businessmen offered their personal yachts. Transport companies volunteered their entire inventories. A famous explorer named Victor Okonkwo, who had spent his life mapping distant stars, flew his ship out of retirement and joined the convoy. People volunteered to crew the ships. Soldiers, engineers, doctors, cooks, factory workers, and teachers. Students who had never been in space before. Old veterans who had thought their fighting days were over. They came from every country, every culture, every walk of life. No one ordered them to go. No one forced them. They simply heard that someone needed help, and they decided to answer. Commander Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the Defiance and watched the fleet form around her. She had never seen anything like it. Ships of every size and shape, from massive warships to tiny shuttles, all moving in the same direction. All heading toward a fight they could not win. James Chun appeared beside her. His face was pale, but his voice was steady. Final count is 1,247 vessels. Approximately 900,000 personnel. Elena nodded slowly. How many of those ships are actually combat capable? About 600. The rest are converted civilian vessels. Most of them have never fired a weapon in their lives. And how does that compare to the Concorde fleet? James hesitated. The Concorde has assembled approximately 15,000 ships. Many of them are far more advanced than anything we have. So we are outnumbered, outgunned, and facing an enemy that has already destroyed civilizations older than human history. Yes, Commander. Elena was quiet for a moment. Then she smiled. It was a strange smile, almost sad, but also somehow peaceful. Good. I would hate for this to be easy. She activated the fleet-wide communication channel. Her voice went out to every ship, every crew member, every person who had chosen to answer the call. This is Commander Vasquez of the Defiance. I am not going to lie to you. The odds are against us. Most of us will not come back. The Concorde does not expect us to make a difference. They barely know we exist. She paused, looking out at the stars. But that is not why we are going. We are not going because we think we can win. We are not going because someone ordered us to. We are going because 12,000 light years away, people are dying. Entire worlds are disappearing. And someone sent a message into the void, asking for help. Her voice grew stronger. They did not ask if we were strong enough. They did not ask if we had advanced weapons or ancient wisdom. They just asked for help. And we are going to answer. She thought of the Valorian ambassador who had spoken to her years ago. He had called humanity young and small. He had wondered if they would survive or fade away like so many others. We go together, Elena said. And we do not stop. Not until every last one of us is gone, or until we have done everything we can possibly do. That is what it means to be human. That is what it has always meant. She ended the transmission. Around her, 1,200 ships began to accelerate, their engines burning bright against the darkness of space. The journey to Karath would take 9 days at maximum speed. 9 days to travel 12,000 light years. 9 days to prepare for a battle that everyone expected to be their last. On the third day, they received news that another 100 worlds had fallen. On the fifth day, they learned that the Kethmer hegemony no longer existed. On the seventh day, they passed through a region of space that had once been home to the Valorian trading posts. There was nothing there now, not even debris. On the ninth day, they arrived at the Kirith threshold. The Concord fleet was already there. Thousands of ships arranged in defensive formations around the last gateway to the core worlds. When the human fleet emerged from hyperspace, there was a long moment of silence. Then Admiral Silex's voice came through the communication channel. He sounded surprised, almost confused. Earth vessels, this is Admiral Silex. We did not expect you to come. Your ships appear to be damaged. Many of them are civilian vessels. Why? Why are you here? Elena activated her transmitter. Her voice was calm and clear. Because you called, Admiral. What other reason do we need? There was another long silence. Then, quietly, Silex said, Welcome to Kirith, Commander. May we all find glory in what comes next. The Harrow arrived 6 hours later. The Harrow did not look like ships. They did not look like anything Elena had ever seen before. They were vast shapes of darkness that seemed to drink in the light around them. Some were spheres, some were spirals, some were geometries that hurt to look at directly. They moved without engines, without sound, without any visible means of propulsion. And they were hungry. The Concord fleet opened fire first. Thousands of energy beams lanced across space, striking the nearest Harrow forms. The beams disappeared into the darkness without effect. Missiles followed, then torpedoes. Then concentrated barrages from the largest battleships. Nothing worked. The Harrow reached the first line of defense and simply passed through it. Ships did not explode. They did not burn. They simply ceased to exist. One moment they were there, the next they were gone. Not destroyed. Erased. Elena watched the tactical display with growing horror. The Concord was losing ships by the hundreds. Their most advanced weapons were useless. Their greatest warriors were being swept aside like dust. Commander, James said, his voice tight with fear. The Concord flagship is ordering a withdrawal. They are saying the battle is lost. Elena did not respond. She was watching the display, tracking the movements of the Harrow, looking for something. Anything. Then she saw it. When the Harrow consumed a ship, there was a brief moment, less than a second, when the darkness flickered. It was almost invisible, but Elena had been watching carefully. The Harrow was not invincible. It had to focus to consume. And while it was focused on one target, it was slightly vulnerable to others. All human ships, she said into the fleet channel. New strategy. We attack in waves. Small groups, fast approaches. Hit them while they are consuming something else. Do not try to survive. try to hurt them. A chorus of acknowledgments came back. Not questions. Not arguments. Just agreement. The first wave was led by a cargo ship called the Morning Star. It was a civilian vessel, barely armed, crewed by 23 volunteers who had never been soldiers. They flew straight at the largest Harrow mass, waiting until it began to consume a Concorde cruiser. Then they detonated their fuel reserves inside its core. The explosion was small by space battle standards. But for the first time, the Harrow reacted. The vast shape shuddered. Parts of it broke away and dissolved into nothing. The Morning Star was gone. But they had done damage. More waves followed. Mining ships loaded with explosive ore. Transport vessels carrying cargoes of unstable chemicals. Shuttles piloted by men and women who knew they would not return, but flew anyway. Admiral Silex watched from his flagship with growing disbelief. The humans were dying by the dozens. Their tactics were suicidal. They had no formation, no discipline, no strategic coordination, but they were hurting the Harrow. What are they doing? His aide asked, voice filled with confusion. Silex shook his head slowly. They are not trying to survive. They are trying to buy time. Time for what? I do not know. But they are buying it. On the Defiance, Elena coordinated the attacks with cold precision. She had already lost 300 ships. More were dying every minute. But the Harrow advance had slowed. Not stopped, but slowed. It was not enough. James, she said quietly, how much fuel do we have left? Enough for a return journey, or one final run. James met her eyes. He understood what she was asking. The crew will follow you anywhere, Commander. You know that. Elena nodded. She activated the ship-wide intercom. All hands, this is the Commander. I am going to do something dangerous. Anyone who wants to leave, you have 2 minutes to reach the escape pods. No judgment. No shame. 2 minutes passed. No one moved. Elena smiled. It was a real smile this time, warm and proud. Very well. Let us show them what humans are made of. The Defiance turned toward the largest Harrow mass. It was kilometers across, a swirling darkness that had already consumed 1,000 ships. Elena could feel its hunger reaching out toward her. Cold and ancient and utterly alien. She pushed the engines to maximum and flew straight into its heart. At the last possible moment, just before the darkness swallowed them, she gave the order to detonate the reactor core. The explosion was massive, far larger than anything the Morning Star had produced. The Harrow mass shattered into 1,000,000 pieces, and somehow, impossibly, the Defiance survived. The blast wave caught one of the escape pods that Elena had secretly ordered prepared. She and James and a handful of crew members rode the shockwave out of the dying mass, tumbling through space until another human ship caught them. When Elena opened her eyes, she was lying on the deck of a medical frigate. Her arm was broken. Her ribs were cracked. Her ears were ringing so loudly that she could barely hear, but she was alive. Commander, a medic said, leaning over her. The battle. You need to see. They helped her to a viewport. What she saw made her heart stop. The Harrow were retreating, not destroyed, not defeated, but retreating. The human assault had done something unexpected. It had made them pause, made them hesitate. For the first time in their long existence, the Harrow had encountered something they did not understand. They had encountered beings who did not run, who did not calculate odds, who threw themselves into the darkness not because they thought they could win, but simply because someone needed help. The Concorde fleet regrouped around the survivors. Admiral Silex's voice came through the communication channel, and for the first time, there was something like awe in his tone. Human vessels. This is Admiral Silex. You have bought us 47 hours. 47 hours to regroup, to analyze, to find a weakness. He paused. No one has ever bought us time before. No one has ever thought to try. Thank you. Elena closed her eyes. Around her, the remains of the human fleet drifted through space. 600 ships had become less than 300. Thousands of people who had been alive that morning were now gone forever, but they had done the impossible. They had made the Harrow afraid. The war against the Harrow lasted 3 years. After the Battle of Kirith, everything changed. The Concorde had seen something that day that shook them to their core. They had watched a young species, barely a footnote in galactic history, throw itself into the darkness without hesitation. They had watched humans die by the thousands, not for territory or resources or power, but simply because someone had called for help. It made the elder races ashamed. The Dominion, who had dismissed humanity as children playing at civilization, sent their most advanced weapons to Earth. The remaining Valorians, scattered and broken, came to fight alongside human crews. Species that had never spoken to each other began working together, united by the example of the strange, short-lived creatures from the small blue planet. Dr. Yuki Tanaka was one of those strange creatures. She was a scientist, 32 years old, with tired eyes and a mind that never stopped working. Her specialty was exotic energy patterns. Before the war, she had spent her days studying the subtle vibrations of distant stars. Now she spent her days studying the Harrow. Her brother, Kenji, had died at Kirith. He had been a pilot on a transport ship called the Wanderer. The ship had been converted into a makeshift bomber and flown directly into a Harrow mass. There were no survivors. Yuk not cry when she heard the news. She did not rage or scream or fall apart. She simply went back to her laboratory and continued working. She worked for 29 months without rest, surviving on caffeine and determination and the cold fire of grief that burned in her chest. The Harrow were not natural. That much was clear. They were not born. They did not evolve. They were something else. Something that existed in the spaces between normal reality. They fed on matter and energy, but they were not made of either. They were more like holes in the universe, gaps where existence should be, but was not. Yuki studied their patterns. She analyzed the recordings from every battle, every encounter, every death. She looked for weakness and found nothing. She looked for structure and found chaos. She looked for meaning and found only hunger. Then, on a cold Tuesday morning in the second year of the war, she found something else. It was a frequency. A specific pattern of electromagnetic radiation that appeared every time the Harrow consumed something. It was faint, almost invisible, buried under layers of noise and distortion. But it was there. Yuk ran the numbers. She checked her calculations 100 times. She built models and simulations and theoretical frameworks. And slowly, carefully, she began to understand. The Harrow were not invincible. They were held together by resonance, by a specific frequency that kept their impossible forms coherent. If that frequency could be disrupted, they would simply fall apart. She brought her findings to the Concorde Council. They listened with growing excitement as she explained her discovery. The greatest scientists of 100 species examined her work and confirmed her conclusions. They built the weapon in 6 months. It was not a bomb or a beam or any kind of conventional armament. It was a transmitter designed to broadcast Yuki's frequency across the entire battlefield. They called it the Echo. The final battle took place at the edge of the core worlds. The Harrow had regrouped and returned, stronger than before, ready to finish what they had started. The Concorde fleet met them with everything they had left. Elena Vasquez was there. Her arm had healed, but she still carried the scars of Kirith. She commanded a new ship now, a Dominion cruiser that had been given to her as a gift. The crew was mixed. Humans, Valorians, Dominion, and a dozen other species, all fighting together. "Commander," James said. He was still at her side, as he had been from the beginning. "The Echo is ready. Dr. Tanaka is waiting for your signal." Elena looked at the tactical display. The Harrow were vast, filling the screen with darkness. They had grown larger since Kirith, fed by the worlds they had consumed. This would be their last attack, or the last stand of the Concord. There was no middle ground. "Yuki," Elena said into her communicator, "are you sure this will work?" On the research station behind the fleet, Yuki Tanaka looked at the transmitter she had spent 2 years building. She thought of Kenji. She thought of all the people who had died. She thought of the small blue planet where she had been born, where children still played and people still dreamed of the future. "No," she said honestly, "I am not sure, but it is the best chance we have." Elena smiled. "Good enough for me. Give the order." Yuki activated the echo dot. The frequency spread across the battlefield like ripples in water. It passed through ships and debris and empty space, growing stronger as it went. When it reached the Harrow, something beautiful happened. They dissolved, not slowly, not gradually. They simply fell apart, like shadows exposed to sudden light. The vast shapes of darkness that had terrorized the galaxy for 3 years broke into fragments. And those fragments broke into smaller pieces. And those pieces faded into nothing. In less than an hour, every Harrow in the system was gone. The war was over. 3 months later, Elena Vasquez stood before the Galactic Concord. The Great Hall was fuller than she had ever seen it. Representatives from every surviving species had come to witness this moment. Ambassador Kethrol stepped forward. His 4 eyes were wet with an emotion that his species rarely showed. "When the Harrow came," he said, "we expected to die. We sent the red alert knowing that it was probably hopeless. We did not expect anyone to save us." He paused, looking at Elena. "We did not expect humanity to answer. Your world was not threatened. Your people would have survived if you had stayed silent. We were not your allies. We barely acknowledged your existence." His voice grew soft. "Why did you come?" Elena thought about the question. She thought about Kenji Tanaka, flying his ship in the darkness. She thought about the Morning Star and its crew of volunteers. She thought about all the people who had left everything behind because someone, somewhere, needed help. "Because you called," she said simply. "That is what we do." The hall was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly every species in the Concord rose to their feet. Not in applause, in something deeper. Something that had no name but was understood by every being in the room. Recognition, gratitude, and perhaps, for the first time, respect. Kethrol spoke again, his voice carrying across the vast chamber. "Let it be recorded in the archives of the Concord. Let it be remembered for all time. When the darkness came, humanity answered. When all hope was lost, they gave us hope. They were young and small and fragile, but they taught us something we had forgotten." He looked at Elena. "Courage is not the absence of fear. Hope is not a calculation. And sometimes, the youngest voices in the dark are the ones worth listening to." Elena nodded. She did not need to say anything more. Behind her, through the crystal walls of the Great Hall, she could see the stars. Somewhere out there, the small blue planet called Earth continued its endless journey around the sun. Billions of humans went about their lives, most of them unaware of how close they had come to oblivion. But they would learn. They would hear the stories. And they would know that when the universe called for help, their ancestors had answered. That was the legacy of humanity. That would always be the legacy of humanity.